Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
I'm not sure if we have our PowerPoint set up yet, but I do want to say that the time capsule opening was a tremendously historic event that I personally was proud of, simply from the fact, I'm not sure if everyone knows, I'm a Balmoral alum. So in '86, when the time capsule was buried, I actually happened to be in 7th grade, but my younger brother and younger sister were students at Balmoral at the time. And being a Crete Monee product from kindergarten through 12th grade, it was so nice to see the outpouring and the fellowship that we had that night. As you'll see a little later as we get the PowerPoint in, we had over 20 parents, 20 former faculty members. When you think back 25 years ago, to have 20 former teachers come together to celebrate the time capsule opening, that is something that's pretty remarkable. In addition, we had over 40 former students that were there able to see their former teachers, and many of us hadn't seen each other since we were in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And so we had a lot of fun joking and talking about nicknames and different incidents from our childhood. But I do feel that there is an extreme honor that I feel being the principal of Balmoral, having attended Balmoral from kindergarten through 6th grade. So I never lose sight of what my experience is and what it was as a child. So with that, I want to call forth the Balmoral students. They've each written different essays that will be included in the time capsule burial in the spring. Our first student is Jessica Thornton.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Thorson. I am the Student Council President of Balmoral Elementary. I am proud to be an officer for my school. With leadership comes great opportunities to raise funds, to support school ideas, service opportunities to help others, and chance to speak on behalf of the student body. I am here tonight to update you on upcoming events for our time capsule to be recommissioned next year. In October, when we opened our time capsule, it served as a learning experience. It was intended to create a historical picture of the past and serve as a way to communicate to their future, our present. We want to create this same cachet for students and the community in 2035. Balmoral Elementary will be 50 years old in the year 2011. This time capsule shall serve as our communication vehicle. Thank you for allowing us to present our information this evening.
Thank you, Jessica. Now I'll have Fatima Zahid come forward.
Good evening. My name is Fatima Zahid. I am a student council representative. I have prepared for you an essay to be put in the time capsule explaining my thoughts on the future. Dear 2035, it is with great pleasure and excitement that I write this letter to you. In 25 years, when this letter is released again for the public, I will be 35 years old. Not only do I hope to become an accomplished scientist by then, I hope to read these very words. At the time of this letter, one of the most fundamental issues we are dealing with is global warming. Global warming is a serious issue in our lives today. To better understand what it means for us and our world, we need to understand the causes and effects of global warming. At this point, there are 5 major causes: deforestation of the rainforest, farm animals releasing methane greenhouse gases, fossil fuel power plants, vehicles, and the process of recovering fossil fuels. We are seriously damaging our planet. Some of the effects of global warming include more hurricanes, the melting on polar caps, and more heat waves and droughts. It is my hope at the unveiling of this letter things will change. We are acting for your future. In our homes, we are changing incandescent bulbs to compact fluorescent lights. We are buying energy-efficient products. We are sealing and insulating our homes and reducing, reusing, and recycling. In our schools, educators are bringing science to life and asking us to make pledges to take on these actions. We are trying, and hopefully these small steps will go a long way. So when you open this letter, we will know how much our commitment has worked. Board members, Superintendent Rogers, administrators, educators, parents, and the public. It is my hope that not only will you join us for the sealing of the new capsule in May, but you will come back in 25 years to hear these same words.
Want Alonzo Cato to come forward?
Hi, my name is Alonzo Cato. I am a student council representative for Balmoral Elementary. I am here to represent my letter, which will be placed in the time capsule. Dear Balmoral 2035, I hope I am in the audience to read this letter to you personally. First of all, when I look at the classes in the school year 2010 through 2011, I think about lots of textbooks, chalkboards, dry erase boards, and lots of number 2 pencils. I imagine your teacher will be using her or his pinky finger to pull out information and project the data on the screen. Textbooks will no longer exist. They will be outdated, and all information will come from some computerized source. Our day is full of math, spelling, reading, and science. Oh yeah, there is a lot of homework. Boring. I don't expect that will change. Yeah, I know. Life as an elementary student kind of seems like it stinks. But there are upsides. We have book fairs, science fairs, bands, safety patrol, student council, and believe it or not, learning can be fun. There are a lot of cool things we get to do and say as kids. This year we talk about the latest gear and collectibles. We also use cool words like coolio when we want to say something's cool. We use the word dude as a noun and a verb. It can also be used as a command. For example, if someone shouts, "Dude," meaning come over here. I hope I will be able to decipher your word choices for cool words. Some have conversations about our President Barack Obama and all the things he's doing. I'm not quite into politics yet, so I leave that to others. My friends and I usually talk about funny commercials, movies, and sometimes sports. Today's sports are football, soccer, basketball, tennis, rugby, volleyball, badminton, and ping pong. We are playing golf at younger and younger ages. Our student council is busy raising money for student events and serving our community. We are excited to be in charge of this project and preserving our stories for you. In student council, we have officers just like our nation's government. Even though I was not elected, we still live in the greatest democracy, where we get to choose our leaders. I know this will not change, not even in the year 2035.
Thank you, Alonzo. Samuel Steele, would you please come forward?
Good evening. My name is Samuel Seal. I am Balmoral's Student Council Vice President. As we begin to prepare for our time capsule for 2035, we want to involve the entire school in choosing the artifacts which will be placed in the time capsule. Teachers are in the process of creating lesson plans to teach us how to use artifacts as an interpretation of life. It is important for us to engage in historical reasoning through inquiry and to reach sound historical interpretations. All classes will decide on their one item they would like to contribute to the time capsule. Student council representatives from each class will present this artifact at our ceremony in May.
Thank you, Samuel. Now we have Marciano Lamar come forward.
Good evening. My name is Marciano Lamar. I would like to give you examples of items that we might include in the time capsule. In 1986, students put in news clippings about the disaster involving the Space Shuttle Challenger. We might decide to include articles about the biggest oil spill in history.
In 1986, technology was on the rise with the first laptop. A Tandy 600 cost $1,300. Like all things with technology, they start off at a higher price. Then the price decreases. We can now purchase a laptop for as low as $299. In 1986, popular TV shows were Family Ties and The Cosby Show. Today, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and the Internet are taking the place of traditional TV programs and TV news. However, as kids, we still enjoy iCarly. In 1986, they listened to rock on cassettes and CD players. We love the Black Eyed Peas, Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber, and Lady Gaga downloaded on an iPod. In the classrooms, they read textbooks or listen to a story on tape. Today, we can read online, use a Kindle, or use our mobile phones. When we seal the next time capsule, we will have an opportunity to give our historical interpretation and share our story. We hope you can join us on this journey.
Thank you, Marciano. Can we give a round of applause for all the students?
Good evening. Ooh, sorry, I won't talk as loud. Good evening to the board members, Superintendent Rogers, fellow faculty members, parents, and students. I do have a short slideshow that I'm going to share with you this evening that's going to be running behind you. So if you want to get in a more comfortable seat to view it, that would be great. And this captures the time capsule unveiling that was held on October 21st, 2010. So it's the brief version. The first slide that's in this picture is actually the stone that was on top of the time capsule that was buried in 1986. And it was scheduled then to be open. Can everybody hear me? Okay. It was scheduled then to be open in the school year of 2010. And I had an interesting conversation about a year ago with the gentleman that's in this next slide. This is Lloyd Brands, and he was the custodian at Balmoral Elementary when the time capsule was actually buried. And I know him because he was the custodian at Crete Elementary when I taught there a few years back. So about a year ago, he volunteered to unearth this for us. And I saw him out in a casual setting one night, and we started talking about it. And he said, "Aaron, when you're ready, I'll come and dig it up." But he said it's going to take a little bit of time. We're going to have to do it on a Saturday because it's encased in a PVC pipe. But what we didn't realize and what he didn't remember is as he started digging, and then digging some more, and digging some more with a pry bar, was that it was encapsulated in cement underneath. Okay, so at this point, we decided to bring the big guns in, and Rashon got involved. And that didn't help either. So we worked on it a little bit more, and as you can see, I wasn't doing anything but taking pictures, but someone has to. This is my husband, and his idea was that we rent a portable jackhammer. So, of course, they sent the female in the group to go get the portable jackhammer, like I know what that is, right? So they sent me up to Ace Hardware in Crete, and I did obtain the jackhammer, and within about 10 minutes after we received the jackhammer, we were able to get through the actual stone. And Rashon needed to get a turn for this because he wanted to experiment with the jackhammer. They wouldn't let me near it, though. Okay. Then, lo and behold, here we have, this is the actual time capsule. And this is a PVC pipe. But then we had another small problem. This was also cemented into the ground as well. So when they buried this, they really planned on making sure that it was indestructible. So then the next step was We get a Sawzall. Okay, so now I know what all these tools are, so this was a great learning experience for me. So this is my husband cutting this open with the Sawzall. And then this is the contents that was inside of the actual time capsule. So at this point then we were all very excited because this was what we thought was going to take, you know, about maybe 40 minutes, took probably 2.5 hours. So at this point then we were examining the contents. And inside the time capsule there were many artifacts from that particular year. There's a Balmoral Elementary folder. At the time they were the Big Chiefs, and now we're the Bulldogs. This was their actual mascot back then, so that's one of their folders from back then. And here's the empty time capsule. The Bears won the Super Bowl, if you remember, in 1986. We're hoping for a repeat sometime. And so there were a lot of Bears artifacts that were also inside of the time capsule. And this is the actual staff that was in place at Balmoral in 1986 when the time capsule was buried. And this is the Balmoral staff now that was in this is the 1986 staff, what they look like now. There were several that attended that evening's events. So it was very nice to see them. And this is a group of the alumni from Balmoral Elementary. And if you look real closely, Mr. Franklin's back there in the picture because he was also a Balmoral alumnus, even though he wasn't there when it was buried in 1986. He was in junior high? High school? Okay. Junior high, okay. I stand corrected. All right, the evening event that we had on October 21st was actually emceed by Mr. Franklin, and we had a short presentation that began with Mr. Franklin's walk down memory lane with his favorite memories of the 80s. We also introduced the staff of Balmoral Elementary that was there in 1986 to that wonderful 80s tune, The Eye of the Tiger, from one of the many Rocky movies. And the two people that are pictured here are Joel Grossi and Peg Dwyer, who were Balmoral staff members. And they did also speak that evening about, you know, what a great event this was because it was buried during the 25th anniversary of the school. The kids were all very excited and had an active role in the burying of the time capsule, just as we plan on having our students actively involved, as you've already heard from our student council representatives already. So they were very excited to be there that evening. They talked a lot about the camaraderie of their staff at the time and how they would do many like outside activities like play volleyball in the gym and just do a lot of fun activities together. The lady pictured here with Mr. Franklin is Lisa Salazar, and she is a Balmoral alumnus. So she also talked about her fond memories of Balmoral and the wonderful cologne that Mr. Grossi would wear that everybody loved, and just all the fond memories that she actually had of the school while she was in attendance there. That would be me in this next slide. I proceeded to come forward, and I talked a little bit about the 80s, and we took a little bit of a walk down memory lane. The 80s was one of my favorite time periods. I heard one of our students say some of our popular music now, Justin Bieber and people of that nature. Back then, you know, it was people like Madonna, and who can forget, you know, Milli Vanilli and some of those people. So we talked quite a bit about that and some of my favorite memories. I highlighted some of them in a short poem that I had that mentioned a lot of our memories from the 80s. And we also had a video that we showed, a YouTube video, that had a lot of the memorable 80s music and entertainment. For example, if you look at this picture, you can see Star Trek, The Next Generation, Three's Company. You know, Whoopi Goldberg is still very popular, but she really gained fame in the 1980s. And the next photo, you know, who can forget Mork and Mindy and Sanford and Son, and I'm I'm not sure who that other group is. It looks like Rick James, but I'm not really sure actually who that other picture is of. And this was the large crowd that we had that was in attendance for the event. We estimated approximately 300 people that attended that evening, and it was actually it was a lot of fun because we continued playing the 80s music. We had the artifacts on display around the perimeter of the gym. You can see in the back showcase, some of them were there on display. And we had one of the artifacts was a videotape of their 1986 burial of the time capsule and their celebration. So we had that playing in the cafeteria, and afterwards people were able to go into the cafeteria and view it, and they were able to enjoy some hors d'oeuvres. So it was really a great event, and many of the Balmoral staff members from 1986 were on hand till, like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. They were just having a great time, just reminiscing about everything. It was just a fantastic evening. Some of the students commented, they're looking at the 1986 video, and they're like, "There's Mrs. Lane in that picture." They thought I was in one of the pictures, and it was a teacher that looked similar to me, and I had to explain to them in 1986 I was kind of a youngster myself, even though I'm not so much anymore. And we're going to end this evening with a quote. "I believe that children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way." And we're letting our student council representatives and our students lead the way as we plan our event for the spring of May 2011. And we hope that many of you can come and join us for that event. Thank you. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but we'd be more than happy to entertain any of those at this time. I don't know if Mr. Franklin has any closing words.
I just want to make sure I recognize our student council sponsors. Oftentimes, as principals, we ask people to take on leadership roles, and we tell them it'll be easy. It's not a big job. And then once they sit and meet with us, there's a lot more to it. So if Mrs. Perkins and Mrs. Harris would stand, because they've been working with the students as far as editing their essays and creating a lot of opportunities for them. And this year there's been a big focus on leadership and service to others, and that's something we're looking forward to as far as developing our students. Thank you.
We don't want you to leave yet. We want to be able to take a picture of the students and probably you, Mr. Franklin, and the board. But before we do that, for the student, they're all student council members, right, who spoke. Could all of you stand up for just a minute, every single one of you? And Sammy, where are you? Raise your hand. When were you born? 2000. Okay. All right, Alonzo, when were you born? 1999. Marciano, when were you born? 2002. Jessica, 1999. Fatima, when were you born? 2001. Now, although, and I asked them this for this reason, for the audience, we have, for some of us older people, we have the memories of the 80s and some of the things that happened, but it's sort of amazing that the students who spoke in front of us, this really was an educational experience for them, because when that time capsule was made, these children weren't even born. And the other thing that I looked up just per se, and then I'm going to have you guys come up for just a minute, we got something for you. I remember when the internet, for me, first came on, as far as me really knowing there was an internet, for all of the members on the board and administrators. You remember AOL, right? Right? Oh, yeah. We saw those discs almost in every store, drugstore. You would see this little AOL disc, and I could have sworn that AOL was in the 80s, and I just looked it up on the internet right now. the first version of AOL, which to me was really the grand opening of the internet, was not published until 1993. 1993. So, you know, that was version 1, and then they give every single version release. Version 8 was in 2002, which one of you had mentioned that. And then I went to just the history of the internet, and Yahoo was founded in 1994. Google was founded in 1998, so right around 2000. And so the things that you talked about as far as just the language, you know, Google, iPads, iPods, and so on, that's a totally foreign language to those students who were born or were going to school in the 1980s. If the two of you could see each other across time, in the sense of if you could go back in time to the 1980s and have a conversation with them, they would probably not know half of the things that you were talking about. Wouldn't have a clue. Justin Bieber, who is that? Madonna, Lady Gaga, well, Madonna they knew, but Lady Gaga, oh my God. And then if they took a picture of her, they might be horrified. My point tonight is thus this: the things that you will write about, and this is what is really going to just sort of be amazing. 1986 really was just maybe what, 15, 20 some odd years ago, 30 years ago, around there. And by the time you bury this capsule, and let's say that you do 2040, you know what's going to happen? It's going to be the exact same thing. What will probably be discovered in medicine, in science, in technology has not even been thought of yet. And the idea of maybe interspace travel, the idea of no gasoline engines anymore in cars, the idea that maybe we will be flying around in jetpacks, you know, who knows what the world will hold for us in another 30 or 40 years is something really to be sort of awestruck by. So we do have a language now, you know, iPods, iPads, Google, Lady Gaga, and so on. But 30 or 40 years from now, those people won't even recognize that language, and they will be about we will not even be message tonight. We enjoyed those support you tonight. We're glad that you came to support them. So you can be seated for just a few minutes because there might be a couple board members that might want to say something. Then we want to take a picture, and then we can move on in the agenda. But thank you. Any board members?
Yeah, I want to say, I mentioned it to you, but I think you all did a great job tonight. I know none of you were nervous before you got here, and you sure didn't show it. We really appreciate that, and we think you're doing a great job. And I know that 1986 is ancient history to you. I have clothes older than that, and I still wear them. So to some of us, it's not that long ago.
And all I have to add is just look where we've come from. You had an opportunity to see what we were involved in back then and where you are now and how vast the future could be for you all today. So take that opportunity, use it to the best of your ability, and as you say, change some of these medical issues that we have. Let's move to a different type of transportation system and all those things. So you all have the opportunity to take us to that next level, just as we had the opportunity to take you to this level.
That's right.
So good luck.
Any other? Ms. Hall?
Good evening.
I'm glad to see you guys out here. I always enjoy seeing our young children come and show us that you are learning and you are excited about learning. I want to pose a question. I would like to know if one of you can answer this question for me. What do you think is going to be in the next time capsule?
Come on to the mic. What do you think will be in this next time capsule? You can grab the mic if you want to.
A piece of homework, because years from now, children might just do homework on the internet.
Okay. Anybody else want to give a suggestion? What else do you think you might put in the time capsule? Come on. It's Fatima, right?
Maybe our assignment notebook, so they'll see what kind of homework we have.
Okay. Come on, Jessica.
Possibly a CD of some of our favorite singers.
Right. I think CDs are going to be long gone by the time, because they're about gone now.
I thought one of them was going to say that Kindle for a minute.
Alonzo, anybody else want to say anything? Come on.
I guess maybe a few pictures of the staff members and the principals and everything.
Yes, that would be good. That would be good. Yeah. Okay.
But thank you all. I appreciate it.
Let's take a quick picture, President. If we could have the board and the students and Rashawn, and if you want to call up any of your staff and students, we have a little gift for you from the board, and Mr. Franklin will give that to you. But if you could come up, all 5 of you, I believe it is, and Mr. Franklin, any staff member that you would like to come join you, come to the center of the stage. All board members, all of you, please, if you would just stand in back, and we would like to take a photo. Come to the center stage. Adults could stand in the back. For those of you who might be just a little bit small, maybe you could step up with the student. That's all if you could. And for the students and parents, you do not have to feel compelled to stay for the rest of the meeting, because we know that they probably need to get home and maybe even get some more work done, or at least make sure that they get to bed on time. So once again, thank you very much on the behalf of the administration and the Board of Education for coming out tonight and sharing your stories.
And also, if you have any public comment sheets, could you turn them in up on the stage for us, please? Okay, at this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Secretary?
Mrs. Claudia?
Here.
Mrs. Hall?
Here.
Excuse me, I just wanted to say a brief comment. Mr. Heisel, my high school gymnastics coach, this is my son, Marciano.
You better get him tumbling.
Good old Miss Central.
Yeah. Wow.
Mr. Heisel?
Here.
Mr. Rose?
Here. Makes you feel old.
Mrs. Sanders? President?
Here.
And Secretary here.
Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have one public comment that's not necessarily related to the tax levy, and I have one that is related to the tax levy. The one that's related to the tax levy we will address once we open up the public hearing for the tax levy. I have Michael Welch, who was talking about the irrigation AC overhaul and I guess the Johnson controls. So.
I'm concerned that you guys just passed a working cash bond for $15 million for one. And now that you guys want Johnson Controls to come in here and do an audit on the schools, you want to repair the ACs and spend about $400,000 on that next year, and you want a $400,000 irrigation system, and you guys are looking for more tax revenue. My concern is, can we use this other money to start using that for the irrigation? You know, the girls softball for this high school plays on the fields, of the other fields. There's no irrigation system, so I think the football and the baseball, Mother Nature will take care of these fields. I also think that sixth grade center should be, once we built this new high school, we were supposed to shut down that sixth grade center, and it's still going. So we got one grade in a high school that had 3 grades in it, 4 grades in it before. So to save some revenue, instead of raising our taxes for this tax levy, can we look at other ways to do this instead of raising our taxes?
Thank you.
Did you want to respond to it?
Well, okay, now the irrigation system, what we tell it is one of the wells on our property. The monies we would use for that are impact fees. Impact fees have to be used for infrastructure. We can't use them for anything else. All right? So it's not taking money away from anything else in the district, and it's not something that we would raise your taxes for. Okay, you know, we don't have enough. To take down the sixth grade center, the estimates run everywhere from $3.5 to $5 million to tear it down. And we don't have it. We keep it because we need the room. It's just one of those things. Where do you put the kids? We can't hang them on hooks. I mean, it's, you know, that's really, it's something we took a hard look at. Believe me, one of the first things we wanted to do was take that place down. And we just can't do it right now. The Johnson Controls thing about the AC, actually what we're doing is an energy audit for green, and we're going for a federal grant to do that. So, I mean, you know, it's going to be federal money that's out there for us to use anyway. And if we can get it, we'll use that money to do the audit. If we don't get the federal grant, we won't. I mean, it's not a question of going back out and saying to the taxpayers, we want more money. And actually, if we do, let's see, if the energy audit comes through and we get the grant, we do that. The idea is to save money in the long run in everything we do. If the irrigation system goes in and we use the impact fees for that, it will save a great deal of money. Can we irrigate the baseball field over at Crete Elementary? No, because the well happens to be here. It's just that simple. You know, it's not a question of just frivolously spending money. Actually, what we're trying to do is save money in the long run. It'd be a lot cheaper to do our own irrigating out of a well and only pay for the electricity than it will be to pay the water bills we have to pay for the village.
All right. At this point in time, I'd like to open up the public hearing on the tax levy, and I'd like to have our business manager start off with a presentation. So,
David, we have to have a motion to open up.
can I have a motion to open up the public hearing, please?
Move.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Coletti, second by Mr. Heisel. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Good evening. My name is Robert Groos. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business here at Crete Monee School District. I'm going to take you through a 15-minute presentation, maybe a little bit shorter than that, just to give you some background information regarding our 2010 levy, to kind of summarize the overall process, give you the information that you need, and then after the presentation, you could ask questions to me and the board regarding the information that we go through here. Just to start off, the property tax cycle, each spring the local assessors will assess the value of your property, and then in the fall all of those assessments for all the different towns will go to the state, and the state of Illinois will then analyze each of those assessments, and they will apply equalization factors to make sure that the local assessors have assessed your property at the 1/3 market value that it should be at. And then in the fall, we have the school districts adopt the legal budget, and in that legal budget are details regarding our revenues, our expenses, and that is kind of the justification for the levy dollars that will be asked for in December. In November, at our previous board meeting, I had presented the tentative levy, which then prompts us to publish notices to the public regarding that levy. And then we're here tonight to have our public hearing regarding the levy. Now, tonight we should vote on and approve the tax levy, and then before the last Tuesday in December, file that with the county clerk. And then basically once the county clerk receives that levy that we turn in, they will compare what we have levied to the various state calculations that determine how much money we are to receive. And basically at that time, they'll make any adjustments. If we have levied for more than what that calculation indicates, they reduce our levy down to the appropriate amount. If we so happen to ask for not the full amount that we could have got, we get the lower amount that we asked for. And then the final step in the cycle is then you will receive your tax bills in May and August of 2011. So basically, the tax levy is the legal process that school districts go through to ask for the tax dollars that they need. Like I talked about, the tentative levy is developed in November. We have our public hearing now in December. The public notice that you would have read in the newspaper is in there because if a district is asking for 5% or more greater than what the previous year's taxes were, you have to publish a standard format notice in the newspaper. Basically, the reason that the amount will usually be 5% or greater is when there's a large amount of new property that increases the tax revenue greatly. Now, with new property, the new property doesn't increase the existing taxpayers' taxes. That's new property coming into the district that we get additional revenue from. And this year, the only reason we have a lot of new property is there's a tax increment financing district, it's called, in University Park. It's an arrangement between the village and an area of their village where businesses will have certain arrangements where the taxes are used to help develop the area instead of going to the taxing districts. Usually that's good for a set period of time. That arrangement is expiring now in 2010. So there's about $35 million of new property that's actually coming onto the the tax rolls this year. So that's the reason why our public notice was indicating an increase of 5% or more, and we'll see more details about that on the following slides. So the next couple of slides are really the most important slides that show you where these numbers are coming from. So really, you know, how do we calculate this number? It's not really a number that we ask for or that we forecast or guess. It's just a pure calculation of a formula that's given to us by the state of Illinois. Basically, you take what the district collected last year, and then you add to that whatever the CPI is for this current tax year. The CPI, that's the Consumer Price Index, which basically that's what the federal government indicates that's what the rate of inflation was for the year. So the U.S. government had said that inflation was 2.7% in last year. So you take what we collected last year, $31.2 million, and then you increase that by 2.7%, and you get the $32 million number. You take that number and you divide it by the existing value of all the property in the district. So you would take the $32 million and you divide it by, when you see the $781 million I have up there, that's the total estimated value of all the property in our district, and then you subtract out the new property from that value to just arrive at whatever the existing values are. You can see that the amount I have is $50 million. That's related to the $35 million TIF I was talking about. And then I overestimate, and we just guessed it'll be $50 million because, which I'll show you on the next slide, that's part of the balloon levy, we call it. Basically, what we're doing is you estimate that new property will be higher than you think it will be, because if you estimate too low and new property comes in higher than what you had estimated, the district and the community misses out on all that tax revenue this year and every year into the future. So you just estimate high, because if you estimate too high, the county clerk, like I talked about, will adjust it down to whatever the amount should be. But if you don't estimate high enough, you lose that revenue, and everybody loses that revenue forever then, because it's excluded from the formula. So basically, you take that $32 million, you divide it by the existing property, and that calculates the tax rate. So that $438, that's the tax rate you see on your tax bill on the section regarding the school district. Now that tax rate here, this is assuming that EAVs, we're guessing that the EAVs will go down 6% for this year. So that's saying that all the values of the properties in our district will probably decrease in value about 6% on average. And that's a forecast. Those numbers are not available to us yet, not for at least 2 or 3 more months until we know the final numbers. So basically, you then take that tax rate that you calculated, and now you multiply it by the total value. New property, old property, all the property combined. So you just take the rate times all the values, and that's the amount, it's called the extension, that's the amount of taxes that the district collects. So really it's just those 3 steps right there. And then basically the county clerk knows of all the bonds that we have outstanding, and they have our debt schedules, and they know how much money we'll need to pay off the different bonds and debt that we have. And the county clerk will actually calculate what that dollar amount needs to be for the tax year, and they add it to that $34 million, and then basically that's our final levy. So in the newspaper you saw the 2010 Truth in Taxation notice that was published. It would have indicated that last year we had about $41 million in property taxes in total for everything that the district collected. It now says that for 2010, that dollar amount is going to go up to $44.3 million. That includes that $15 million of extra property that we're putting in there just for a cushion to make sure we capture everything. If you were to take that out, you can see in green that the total dollar amount would really be about $43.7 million. So that's a year-over-year increase of about 8.8%. The good news is that that does not mean that your taxes, that your individual taxes are going up 8.8%. So I'll show you an example of why that's the case. In 2009, the tax rate for this district was $5.24. Now, in 2010, with all of the numbers that we have in our tax calculation, the rate is now going to be $5.70. So that's a year-over-year increase of about 46 cents. So now, if you take an example of a house that's worth about $200,000, now if you look last year, you take that $200,000 house, your assessment value would be 1/3 of that amount. So you divide by 3. Your typical house is going to get a $6,000 homestead exemption, and then you would take that amount and multiply it by the tax rate. So it was $5.24 last year. So that would have been about a $3,179 tax bill in terms of the amount of money that just goes to the school district. Now there's other amounts that go to the village, to the fire department, to the public library, but this is just the portion regarding the school district. So now if you look at 2010, that same house, on average, we're assuming would go down in value about 6%. But now you can see that the rate has gone up to about $5.70, and so the total tax bill this year would be $3,230. So that would be a $51 increase on your total annual tax bill, which is about 1.6%. So as you can see, it's not the 8.2% that's published in the newspaper. Now, these amounts will vary depending on the value of your individual house, the different exemptions you might have, and it's important to realize the district is not calculating the value of your house or the tax rate. It's all just a function of these formulas here. This slide shows all of the unit districts in our 3 counties surrounding us, and some other districts that are in the area that are comparable to our district. You can see on the list, what I have on here this is the amount of taxes that we collect for each student that comes to this district, and the total property value per student in the district. So you can see Crete Monee is at about $7,500 of taxes is collected for each student that attends the district. And this is the comparison to the other districts that are comparable to our district. I just put this slide in here to remind everybody at the end of last school year the steps we took to bring our budget back in line, to try and be as efficient as possible, to cut as many programs that we thought was necessary to try and balance our budget. Essentially, we ended up cutting about $4.5 million of expenses out of our FY10 budget for this FY11 school year. And this is the FY11 legal budget that was adopted in September that supports the rationale for this levy. Basically, the first group are our operating funds. Those are the funds that basically run the district on a day-to-day basis. You can see in the education fund, there is a $876,000 deficit. In O&M, it's $776,000, and in transportation, it's $2.7 million. So if you sum up all the operating funds, it's about a $3.8 million deficit that we have for FY11. That $2.7 million, really, the reason that fund has always been basically a balanced break-even fund. We always had the same amount of revenue as expense in transportation, but unfortunately this year with the state's poor economic situation, they're not able to make the transportation payments that we need to transport the students to school. So really, the only money supporting transportation currently is the local tax levy, which is why there's a large deficit in that fund. Now, the money that we calculated a few slides back, the money that we're going to collect in taxes, this is how that money will be allocated to all the funds. Most of the money goes to the education fund, which is used for all the instruction, all the schools, and then the operation and maintenance funds is to maintain all the buildings, all the heating bills, gas bills, water bills, and this is the way we distribute the tax dollars to the various funds. You can see it's $34 million of actual operating revenue that we're collecting, and then the bond and interest fund is about another $10 million to pay off bonds that have been sold in the past to build the high school, build Monee Elementary, and our past working cash bonds that we would have issued. So the next 4 slides is, there's only about 6 slides left. The next 4 slides here, this is just to give you an overview, an idea of what are the different factors that drive your taxes up or down. The first factor would be basically in general, what this example is showing you is when the value of your home goes up, and when that value goes up more than the value of the overall average values of all the homes, basically that will drive your taxes up, because what is happening here, you see in bold the last 2 bullet points, you can see that the tax rate is actually coming down, but the value of your house is actually going up, going up 5% in this example. So that would be an example of a factor that would drive your taxes up. Another example, in which is actually taking place this year, is the value of your home goes down. However, it doesn't go down as much as the values of the other properties in the community. So, a situation where this would happen would be if you have 4 or 5 homes on your block that are maybe in foreclosure, and they're all decreasing 10-15%, but your home is still kind of maintaining its value. The tax rate, you can see in this example, actually goes up to account for the fact that all these values are going down, and therefore your property value hasn't gone down as much. So you can see in the calculation that this would also cause your taxes to go up. The most common or intuitive reason would be basically if the district is asking for more money, that would cause your taxes to go up. Basically, the only way that the district asks for more money would either be through a referendum, or in this case, like we had discussed before, if the rate of inflation, say, is 2.7%, that's the amount of increase that we could capture. Now, last year, inflation was 0.1%, so basically there was no increase last year. Inflation for this upcoming year, it's looking like it might be a little bit under 1%. So really this 2.7% is pretty high, and we don't expect to see that in the next coming years. And then finally, our different debt payments. There's all the different debt schedules, just like mortgage payments. There's a schedule of payments you need to make when they come due. And sometimes if you pay off some bonds and then the next year you don't have those payments, that would, obviously then we would have to ask for less money to make these debt payments. That could cause taxes to go down. Of course, if there's more debt payments to make, then you would have to ask for more money to pay off that debt, and that would drive taxes up. So, the main factors that could help taxes go down would be, like I talked about, when debt is being retired and paid off, that would help us to be able to ask for more money in future years. Obviously, if the value of the property in your community is going up in value faster than your own home, the tax rates would then be coming down, and that would help taxes go down. And then finally, economic development. Basically, the more businesses, the more industry that you get into your community, the better off you are, because then they're helping to kind of absorb all the tax bills that need to be paid. Now, just something to highlight for Crete Monee, our district is very heavily dependent on residential property. It's about 84% of the property that we have. Commercial is 9%, industry is 2%. A lot of our industry is actually in those tax increment financing districts that I talked about earlier. Those were arrangements made between the village and these businesses in past years. And pretty much a lot of that property is cut off from our tax revenue for up to 23 years. So even though you might see a lot of businesses or industry in the area, the actual percentages that we're collecting it's only 9% and 2%. So the property taxes that we collect fund about 60% of the total expenses in the district. So that's a pretty high percentage, but it's not 100%. So that is one of the reasons why when we get a CPI increase, we take the full CPI increase, because as you saw, we have a deficit budget. We can't afford to leave tax revenue on the table. So basically, historically, you would have seen your property values going up and tax rates coming down because of the way the formula works. Basically, in that situation, rates go up, or rates come down, values go up, but the tax bills would still go up to pay for that CPI inflation increase that we talked about. Actually, this year is one of the first times that you actually see the values coming down, but now the rates are going up to account for those values going down. And the rate will go up just enough to pay for that CPI inflation increase that we talked about. This slide is basically just the tax calculation. This is the full calculation. We'll actually receive from the county clerk this final calculation. This is something that I could go through in detail if you wanted to, but right now, I mean, basically, it's just going through and doing the math of everything we just talked about here. Basically, you know, that was kind of the summary, just basic information I wanted to give the community tonight. And now, right now, we could open it up for questions or comments from the public. The board could come back up to the table, and then we can answer those questions. Thanks for your time.
Okay, I'm going to open up with Larry. Let me get it correct. Milkovich.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say. Just where do we go to find where the money's being spent? The extra additional funds that's being collected. That's what I'm most interested in. I'm most interested in understanding how we could save money and get off the spending boat. When we put up that example of the $200,000 home, and it makes it look like our tax is only going up $58, in that same slide, you don't mention I lost $12,000 of equity in my home. You don't mention that my health care has gone up or any of those types of things. So I'm a little bit concerned about the spending, the ranking of the school district amongst other school districts in this state, and how this money is being allocated and spent. So I guess my question is, I can do my own research if you point me in the right direction. Where do we go to find where all these dollars are being spent? It seems like there's a lot of different buckets. We had the balloon, the levy, the state funding, and things of that nature. How do we connect the dots and say, all right, these projects are being funded by these dollars, and my tax dollars are going exactly where? That's kind of the information I'm interested in.
Actually, you can come in and sit down with Bob, and you can get one of us, you can get myself. I'm Tom Heisel. I'm the finance chair. We'll come down, we'll go through the budget, the line item budget with you, if you like. Basically, everything's based on a fund, and if you take a look at the bill, everything, there's a specific rate for each fund. What goes into the education fund, if you remember that one slide, that was the big dollar amount, the $27 million.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken. And one of the things people don't understand, we can't move it from fund to fund, it has to stay there. So if you want to come in and see where that money's going, we can do that. Now, one of the things you asked about is the same problem all of us have. We're seeing values go down, and the state formula says that when values go down, the rates go up so that they can maintain. Sure. All right. And we only get 60% of our money from the state of Illinois. The Constitution says we're supposed to get 51% of our money from the state of Illinois. You saw that big hole, $2.7 million in transportation. The state of Illinois is supposed to pay 80% of all of our transportation costs. This year they told us they'll give us 40%. They cut it in half. So give Bob a call. Come on in, we'll go through the budget, we'll show you where the revenues come from, what the deficits are, and we'll show you where it's spending. That's not a problem. One thing that people need to know is the reason we went for the working cash bonds is we cannot be sure the state will pay its bills this year. In my other life, I work with state and federal grants. Right? We receive the fiscal year for the state runs July 1, June 30. They hadn't made all their payments, so they fixed that. The state extended the fiscal year to December 31st. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we finally got our last payments in, right, Bob? Right. Finally got our last payments in for FY10. It's the end of December. The people at the state board that I talked to in funding and disbursements have told me most of our fiscal year 11 money we won't see till FY12, which really puts us in a bind because we don't get the state funds. So I would suggest, is Larry, right?
Sure.
Give Bob a call. Come on in, we'll sit down, we'll go through it, and I can be honest with you, every time I go through this stuff, especially the revenue side and dealing with the state, I lose more hair.
Just a quick follow-up. The levy, the monies collected through property taxes goes to the general fund, I forgot what you called it.
They go to the specific funds. The money collected for the ed fund goes into that. The money for transportation goes into that.
So there's certain percentages of each of these funds?
Right.
Those are documented somewhere?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And we can't move it. Now, if let's say there's an emergency, the only fund you can move, and that was the lowest fund, that was $10,000 working cash. And that's supposed to be your savings account, your mad money, so to speak. So that if you get desperate, you can borrow from working cash, move it into any fund. That's the only one. If, let's say, the building fund, when we sold the bonds for the high school, and we could have sold $79 million, we sold, I think it was $59. If we had sold the extra $20 million and put it in the bank, it's nice. You got to pay it off later, but we couldn't use it anyplace else. If you did take it, and this is part of the state law, if I move money from, say, the building fund to the education fund, it has to be paid back by the end of the fiscal year. So, I mean, the things are there. So you can come in, we can show you the monies, where they come into the fund, and where they go.
Are these on the board intranet site?
Pardon?
Is all this data on the internet site?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you go to the district website and you click on the business tab,
Yep.
all of this is on there. Our legal budget is on there, and then the budget presentation from September, which kind of makes it easier and just summarizes it. Because the legal budget, it's very long and complicated, and I would sit down and explain because it gives more detail. But the budget presentation that's on the website does summarize a lot of the questions like that you're asking right now.
But if I just want to clarify a couple of things that Tom Heisel said. We get 40%. We get 40%. The state's supposed to give us 51%. You had that backwards. So the state is shortfalling us. And I think what may help a little bit more is if you share, when we get the paper back from the county, the breakdown, because we know that most of the fund categories is going to be in education, is going to be in the debt, because those are our biggest two funds. Our education fund is where we pay our teachers and our education material, and that debt fund is where we have to pay back for borrowing the bonds that we have to borrow for the buildings and things of those nature. But the county gives you a breakdown. Besides our line item budget, you can get the breakdown from the county that tells you exactly how much by percentage is going into each one of those funds. So that would be a help if you would share that with them as well, and that should be able to.
Right. And this presentation will be posted at the same location on the website, and you can go. It was right in the middle. There was a slide. It broke it down, the dollar allocation of the whole levy.
What type of cost-cutting initiatives do we have? Do we have a plan published or anything where we're trying to? I know that some of the investment you had mentioned is for long-term savings. I can certainly understand that. To somebody else's comment about Johnson Controls and turning the lights off. I go past that school at night and it's lit up like no tomorrow, and it doesn't take much for a cleaning guy to do this, as opposed to retrofitting electronics into a brand new building. but things of that nature. I mean, that's kind of what I'm interested in learning about. You know, what kind of initiatives are we taking to actually cut
yeah,
costs?
we can show you go through the lines for the budget cutting that we did for this year.
Okay.
And the horrible part is that is it 80% of our budget is personnel, 80% of our budget is personnel.
Yeah, 80% is in the education fund. 80% of the education fund is salaries and benefits.
So when you start to make cuts, I hate to say it, but that's the biggest hit, and we did cut a great deal. But we can sit down and show you where the cuts were made and the plans. And that's one of the things about the audit. I mean, is if we can get a federal grant to come in and take a look at this audit and save money. To give you an idea, a couple of years ago, maybe less, looked at the idea of a wind turbine. You know, build one. Takes about 14 years to make back the money after you dump the $250,000 to $300,000 into building the turbine, and that doesn't cover the maintenance of the darn thing once you get it up. But we've looked at that, yeah. So yeah, you can come in and see. We've got the plans are there.
All right, thank you very much.
You have any other questions? Sure. Step up to the mic.
Hi. That's so loud. Bob, can you explain to me a little bit about the new property, the $35 million?
Sure.
From what I'm understanding, that's TIFs that are expiring,
Right.
correct? Wouldn't that bring in a ton of new tax revenue?
Sure. Yeah, the $35 million that's coming onto the tax rolls this year, that's going to equate to over $1 million of additional revenue. So, I mean, essentially, if that TIF was not expiring this year, the district's deficit budget would be that much worse off. So, it's definitely it's a huge help. We're fortunate in a time like this. Most districts have basically zero new growth, so very little growth in their property tax revenues. We're fortunate that in this very hard time where the state's not paying their bills on time and all that we do have that TIF expiring. It just happened by chance. I mean, it was established 23 years ago. It's been 23 years, so now it's expiring. So the $35 million of new property translates to over $1 million of actual revenue.
So it would be more than that we would need if that wasn't happening?
Right.
Okay. And then my other question was about the property tax increases and how you had said if the home value drops, the taxes still go up.
Right.
I actually had my property reassessed because our value has dropped so much, as everybody's has, and my property taxes went down substantially.
Right.
So explain to me what you mean by that.
It all depends.
Because my house dropped about $30,000,
Sure.
and my property taxes went down about $1,500.
Right.
So
pretty much it has to do with it's not important if the property is going up or down. It's what is the relationship to the overall EAV of the district. So for example, if the EAV of the district goes up 2%, but your house goes up 10%, your house is increased in value faster than everybody else, so that would be a situation where the taxes would actually go up. Or another, so you said that so if your values went down, let's say the value of your house went down 10%, but the value of all the other houses maybe stayed, like last year the values stayed pretty much flat. So last year if property values were flat, the overall rate would not be going up as much to account for that. But at the same time, your value goes down substantially. That would be a situation where you actually see a decrease. So it all comes down to what is your house doing versus the overall average of everything else. So if you're on the right side of that equation, then it could be helpful. If you're actually on the other side of that, that's when your tax bill would actually go up.
Okay, because more and more people I've spoken to are calling Will County Assessor, and they are coming out and reassessing our property,
Sure.
and they're dropping everybody's taxes. So I'm just wondering what the impact that will have on this as
Right.
well.
Because, I mean, ideally what you want to see happen is you want to see everybody else's value maintain its value or actually go up in value, and then go and get your reassessment and have yours go down. Because if theirs is staying stable, then the rate is kind of staying stable. But if you're the only one where you've gone and got your reassessment and your value actually goes down, you'll actually see the savings. Now, if everybody goes and everybody's value goes down, the impact is large enough that the rate starts to account for that and starts to creep up.
Right.
And then now if everybody's goes down, the rate's just going to go up and nobody will really see a decrease. So it's just a matter of what's happening with all the different property values out there.
Yeah, because everyone pretty much has gone down in the last few years.
Yeah, but you got to remember that when the tax cap was passed and the law was passed, what the legislator said was is everybody drops, the tax rate goes up to equalize. And we're at a point now where we've got you got lucky in one sense, unless you're trying to sell your house, you know. And yeah, I don't want to think about what ours did, but so when it goes down and the others didn't, the tax rate may have gone up, but because your value went down enough, it saved you some money.
I can give you put it in perspective like this. If there was $100 million in the pool, and the villages said that each one of them needed maybe $8 million, and the school district said, you know, we need $35 million to operate. Less than $35 million, we would have to do some major cutting of programs and things of that nature. So when the county takes a look at this and it says, well, we're going to decrease property values. People go out and they contest their values, and those values drop. Well, if the EAV was $100 million and it dropped down to $90 million, those villages would either have to cut drastically, or they would have to ask for more dollars by raising the tax rate, because you still got to get to that $100 million pool. They still need $32 million. The district need this amount. And when that shortage comes in, that's where the tax rate tends to kick up. So on one hand, it's a great thing to have those EAVs dropped in order to reduce our taxes, but it has a alternative effect to where it causes us to have to raise the tax rate, which may have an increase on your tax bill.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Are you aware that there's about 40% foreclosure rate in Crete right now?
Yes, I'm aware of it within the district,
Right,
not just one community, within the district, yes.
The people that are holding on.
Including us.
I know you are, but the people that are holding on, you're still getting your money through these banks, but at some point, the rest of us people that are just barely hanging on right now, you ain't going to get no taxes from us, because we ain't going to be here.
Yes, all communities' taxes related to the school district, everybody, Park Forest, University Park, Crete, Monee, on their tax bill, has a 201U line where taxes are allocated to the district, yes. It depends on, once again, what the EAV and how that EAV is split between the communities. That determines whether or not there will be an increase or not. Well, I can put it. Well, I can say this just from University Park, because I do live there. We have always had the highest tax rate in the district. Our tax rate overall was 10 point something, and the school double digits, as high as 12.1. And the school district always got 5 point something, almost close to 6% from University Park. We've been fortunate to reduce our taxes. It's still double digit. It's still the highest within the district, but, you know, our taxes have increased just of last year due to the $15 million. So, yes, we've got to deal with that as well. But as far as finding out where it's at, you contact the county, Monee, the Crete Town, Will County assessor can give you that information. It's public information out there and give you the tax rate of each one of the communities, as well as what those percentages are.
And the tax rate for the school district is exactly the same no matter what community it is. The only reason there's a fluctuation is all the other taxing districts in each community. Like, for example, university parks, public library might charge more taxes than Monee's, or it's all the other line items that might make the difference. But if you were to look at a tax bill from each community and look at the tax rate for the school district, it'd be the exact same number no matter where you lived.
Any other questions? Have a motion to close the public comment on the tax levy?
Move.
Second.
I would like to have a motion to open up the, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're going to have another public hearing shortly, but right now we want to bring up Ron Fulby to talk about the Safe to School Routes grant. So, Ron?
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
The Illinois Department of Transportation received some federal funds through the Safe, Accountable, Flexible, Efficient Transportation Equity Act to substantially improve the ability of primary and middle school students to walk and bicycle to school safety. 201U and the Village of University Park have worked cooperatively to identify safety traffic hazards, have completed a University Park Safe Routes to School traffic plan to alleviate some of these hazards, and have completed a competitive grant application to support the elimination of these hazards. Leslie Fimister of the Cook County South Suburban Coordinator, IDOT group, Kakona Chrysos, principal of Crete Monee Middle School, Aaron D. Bartolo, principal of Crete Scott King Magnet School, and I have been working with Kimberly Porter, who is the University Park Director of Economic Development, and village engineer Jerry Townsend, to develop a Safe Routes to School travel plan for middle school and CSK students to improve the ability of students to walk and bicycle to school safely. This plan has been approved by IDOT. Following the approval of the Safe Routes to School plan, a grant application has been developed to be submitted to the Illinois Department of Transportation by the Village of University Park. At both the middle school and CSK, a large number of students are transported by car, creating traffic congestion at the opening and dismissal of school. Additionally, students walking and choosing to take Olmsted to the entrance of the middle school have been observed walking in the street. Also, for several years, students walking or riding their bikes to both CSK and the middle school have used the Hickok walking bridge. This bridge is now closed due to structural concerns, but kids have been observed going around the barrier. The grant application that University Park has made is for $250,000 for 3 projects. 1, to replace the Hickok walking bridge. 2, to construct a sidewalk on the south side of Olmsted between the entrance to the middle school and the parking lot located immediately east of the middle school and the Wriggle Farm Road. The third has to do with signage and markings in front of CSK. College of University mistaken, it was about $10,000
Yeah,
a
I
piece.
remember.